is ours to elect. Vocalize oppression to effect. Voicing out truths empathetically. Volunteering our time energetically. Voiding offensive tyrannical enemies. Vitalizing opposition to equity. Visualizing overthrowing the elected. Vaccinating order through epidemics. It all starts with community. Him and her, them and them, you and me. Unity. No party of mine is ever...
All right, welcome back everybody to the Election Day 2020 live stream for the Chester County Democratic Committee. My name is Kyle Hudson, and I'm like super stoked to invite this next person on. Sorry about that. My buddy Chris here is on state committee. He's on the Veterans Caucus, and is someone who's really helped me develop as someone as a young person in politics, because you were so welcoming, and when I was like a little green behind the ears, still trying to figure everything out, you're like, no buddy, it's cool. And I can't tell you enough how much I valued that, and how much you just like validated my experience. So I just want to say that right off the bat.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Kyle. And I think that's part of what politics is about. It's about us coming together, really, and that's what this election day is about. And shout out, if you've not voted yet, go to the polls. Let your voice be heard. There are so many things, not just the president's not just on the ballot. What else is on the ballot? You got your state reps on the ballot. You've got your state senators in some places on the ballot. We've got a great candidate, Chrissy Houlihan, for U.S. Congress. She is our sitting congresswoman. And, as a fellow veteran, she has just been so inspirational. And I was a medic in the Army as well. So I have that STEM background. And we've seen during this pandemic how important it is to have people with that type of background, both the military and the science background, when you're running the government, right? We got to think these are the big questions, the time where we need government. And we have a great candidate in Chrissy Houlihan, who currently is representing us, I think, very well. I've seen she won an award recently for transparency and accountability. And I'm not surprised. She has that integrity. So I think there's a great slate from people I've worked with, Carolyn Comita, Dan Williams, incumbents that are running, to so many other people. I'm not going to go through all their names, but just so many great people and new people who are running this time, like Anton, just wonderful, wonderful people that we really need to get out to the polls. I know earlier today, if you haven't gone to the polls, if maybe you went to the polls, you got a little discouraged, really long lines, but the lines have really tapered down. They have tapered down. I was just at the polls about an hour ago. I can just check see if anything's changed over here.
Oh. Yeah, I just voted myself a little while ago, and I can verify that fact 100%. That I just like in and out. There's like one guy in front of me. I actually wound up spoiling my mail-in ballot and voting in person, just because it was like closer to go to my library than it was to go to the drop box. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's so important to go out and be a part of this, and standing in line, especially on like a cold, dark night like tonight. Like I can understand not wanting to do that, but honestly, like this only comes around once, right? And if you don't, if you're as upset as Chris and I and the people we work with are about the way things are going, I mean, you actually have an opportunity to do something about it, right? Like today, and only today, and only until 8 o'clock. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's what is it, 6:26 right now, and so you got like what, an hour and a half, and that's it. So I know you what?
And if you are in line at 8 o'clock when the polls close, stay in line. They have to let you vote. Make sure you let other people know you want to stay in line and cast your ballot. And as long as you get there before the polls close, you're allowed to vote. Sorry, I think I interrupted you, Kyle. Continue.
No, I mean, I just want to say, like, just be aware, like, you can't wear any, like, Biden gear in, but you can wear other kind of cause stuff. Again, it's that electoral politics, issue politics thing, like the electoral politics stuff, not allowed. Issue politics, allowed. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this live stream was because, I feel like we are kind of missing out on that communal event that we do on election day, where you pop down and you have the donuts and you chit chat with your neighbors, right? Like, I feel like because of coronavirus, we are missing out on that.
Yeah, to me that's the hardest part. This was so, even for the Republicans, even the Republicans that are there, I missed our moment to bond. I'm wearing purple today, symbolic of bipartisanship, because I felt in a lot of ways that we were going to lack that, and that we need to come together as a country, right? We really are divided, and coming out and voting and high voter participation rate, which we're hearing. I think no matter what happens to the election, because we can't predict, who knows what's going to happen. But if we're seeing these high voter turnout levels, it's more representative, right? The more we get closer to a high number of people coming out, the more we're feeling like a democracy.
Oh, I agree.
The more we are. Yeah, go
I
on.
just said I agree. I agree.
Oh yeah. I feel that there's so much to be there, and we look at issues like raising the minimum wage, which is massive, even to maybe, even up to 10-10, even if it's not all the way up to 15. I support 15 personally, but even getting it to 10-10, super majority of Americans support that. Majority of Americans support 15, but a super majority support 10-10. And that is where, when we have this low voter turnout and we don't have these common sense solutions, common sense things on universal background checks for gun reform, right? Just really the common sense issues that I think where we can find the common ground on. We can get that way when we have the higher, I think, voter turnout. When we've had this lower voter turnout, and when people feel like, well, does my vote really count? Am I going to get everything that I want when I come in there? You're not going to get it all.
Probably not.
Yeah. But you know what? You still show up, because if you don't show up, somebody else is. It's who shows up at the polls. I hate to say this, but to the victor goes the spoils. A lot of times it's who are the people that show up at the polls, and that's why it's so important. If you have not gotten out there, here's something I did today. I went through my phone and I texted up 35 people. I'm like, I was told 3. Some people were shooting for 10. I said, well, I want to get to 10. So I'm going to text up as many people as possible to get 10 replies back. I decided to really up my ante, really get to 10 replies back. And there were 2 really great replies back. One was like, you know what? Yes, I'm making a plan. He made a plan. Somebody I hadn't talked to in months. Just briefly talked to him. Really, we're just friends from a long time ago. But he's like, I'm going to the poll. I'm doing it right after work. Another person I talked up said, yeah, I'm going to go to the poll, and I'm going to bring 4 of my children, who will be the first time they've ever voted in their life in a presidential election. And that was just wowed. I got combined, it was 7. My sister, my adopted sister, she texted me yesterday and told me, like, she's like, I voted. And then she said something, and I wrote it down. I can't remember what it was. It's your duty and your voice. She said, it's your duty and your voice to vote. And I thought, that is so true. There is something about, I know a lot of times in this pandemic, we're on lockdown, right? And how are we engaging? And we can't go out there. always in work. I know there's a lot of people out there who are just like bummed out. My nieces worked in the wedding industry. Nothing they can do. It's like they did photo booths for weddings, and it's a bummer. But you can participate in the democracy. I truly believe the most important duty you have in this country is to participate in your civic duty. You know, no matter if you're disabled, no matter if you are unemployed, whatever it might be, you can still participate in this act and help shape our country.
And the one thing, and you know, I do advertising and stuff like that. I love slogans, and I do. I'm usually very critical of political slogans. I feel like a lot of them are very empty. But the one that Joe Biden uses that I really, it really did resonate with me is like build back better. You know, because building back better, like I don't like the way things were before. I mean, I'm a progressive, right? And so like the way things were wasn't good enough, right? Like I I don't want to make America great again. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to look back. I want to look forward. And I do think that's the correct mentality to be approaching this. Like, I mean, I've been very open about the fact that I was not originally a supporter of Joe Biden. I didn't vote for him in the primary. But at the end of the day, I was like, I got to vote for this guy because he's the only shot I got at making my life for my daughter better, right? Like my daughter is going to grow up in a very different world than I grew up in, and her mother, right? Like my wife. Like we're it's going to be radically different. Now, is it going to be better or is it going to be worse, right? As millennials, how many times have you heard this, right? We're the first generation to have a lower standard of living than our parents. Well, I want to make sure that we're the last because I'm not willing to put my daughter through the craziness. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, honestly, this last year felt like a decade. Like, honestly, seeing Andrew Yang give a speech in Philly seems like it was 5 years ago, for real.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, I just I have hope though. I
So
do have hope because I see these young kids. I see these young kids, and I don't mean to be derogatory. These young adults coming up, who are like marching and organizing and doing all this stuff. I work with a couple of them through the party, and it's just like blows your mind. Like I'm like, dude, when I was 17, I wasn't doing this. All right, I'll say that I wasn't doing this, and and
right.
that's
Yeah.
huge.
I was talking with my friends from high school. I was homeschooled, and we had this very close knit group. And it's really interesting because we're still really, we don't necessarily spend a lot of time together, but we're always on Facebook, liking each other's things, messaging each other back and forth, top fans. It's a really interesting little group. And we were chatting, and we're saying, you know, back in high school, we never talked about politics, ever concerned about it. It was we didn't really. This was my experience. And she said, and we were talking. We're super involved. She wants to come to Democratic events. We're like super engaged now, and we're like, it is a different environment. And I think in a lot of ways, when we look at what happened in the Charlottesville rally in 2017, when Trump came off at the escalator and started kids in cages, horrific things that we're not used to. This is not normal. Those were the things that I think I even seen Generation X, people in their mid 40s being like, I never cared about politics for 20, 30 years. And so I think you see this whole Generation XYZ kind of coming together, getting involved for the first time in politics. A lot of ways I've seen, and you know, it's to me that's really inspirational because I almost feel like we're transcending this generational gap. There's like a cohort of people who are not necessarily, um, you know, going against what they're coming together. There's like this coming together, and we're forming what Reagan did in the 80s. There's a new generation that's forming something different. I really believe that.
Well, I mean, I think you and I have privately had this discussion where I've told you that, like, I really think one of the reasons why engagement is up is because of Donald Trump, and he's pushed things so far that people were like, nah, someone's watching that, right? Someone's got that, right? Like I don't got to worry about that. And then it's like, oh wait, the person who's supposed to be watching that is us, right? And I think that was a huge revelation for a lot of people that, like, wait, we are the ones who are ultimately responsible for this stuff, and we are the ones who are ultimately responsible for keeping our leadership accountable. And honestly, I mean, I've always voted, but I've never really been as engaged as I have been in the last 4 years, and it is it has opened up my eyes to A, the problems, but also B, what is possible. Because I do believe that, you know, now there's like the whole electoral college stuff with the president, and that's a whole other story. But every other election is whoever gets the most votes wins. And that's a very simple thing, but like you said, when you get, like, it means more when you have more participation. And that's
Yes.
why, like, if you don't if you don't if you decide that you're not going to vote, like, that's a decision too, right? So you're like I'd rather make a decision that impacts the outcome, right? Than just opt out and say, you know what, I'm going to live with it. Because,
Yeah.
and I'm a firm believer that every vote is valid. Like, I don't believe in wasted votes. If you vote for one of the other parties, you know what I mean? Like, that's your sacred right as an American. You can do that. But I always tell people, like, if you're voting for, like, let's say the Green Party because you want the Democrats, it's like a protest vote against the Democrats. I would say, like, instead try and get involved with the Democratic Party, right? Like, you can't just vote
Right.
for a party, like, if like what the better option is to, and this is what I've been doing, is like you get in with the party and you work from within inside to push them in the direction that you want, right? Because, like, I promise you, no one will advocate for the things you want better than you.
I absolutely love that. You've said that before to me, and I've heard that, and it is so true. And I just want to go back and correct something. I misquoted what my sister said. This is what she said: things will only get better if we vote. And one of the most, a very sad moment in the debate was when Donald Trump put Biden down for looking into the camera and talking directly to the American people. That's what I want from a leader. I want somebody who is going to talk not at me, not going to send a commercial always at me, not necessarily a slogan, but I want you to really talk to me. And I think that's one of the things where if you were thinking about voting another election, you think you're not going to go out and vote, think about that. Don't you want somebody who will talk to you? That's where, that's the big thing when it comes to the number one reason. Biden's going to listen. He's going to talk to us, and he's going to be able to lead. Leaders need to be able to have conversations with you and talk to you. You need to be a leader. And I don't see that in this current president. I do not see a president who is leadership. He's there for his own selfish purposes. And, I actually like a lot about Biden. I think growing up in this area, watching Biden since I was a teenager, on WHYY, Channel 12. He would be on all the time, always taking the train up there. And it was interesting because I didn't know who my state senator was from Pennsylvania when I was young, but I knew who the senator from Delaware was because he was talking to the people. He was there. He was going to be engaged. And you know what? No matter where you go ideologically, you can't put a price on that. That is so critical.
I will tell you, my wife's family is originally from Wilmington, and he
Mm,
is. I mean, like, that was part of the warming up process, right? Was like Leslie's family is like a huge Joe Biden fan. You know what I mean? Like they even like now back. I actually, like, years and years and years like ago lived in their house for a little bit, and like that was the only politician I ever remember them talking about. And I mean, because this is back when he was a senator, like before he was, I think even no, I think he had just gotten elected or something like that. Um, anyway, but yeah, Joe Biden, and that's another thing. Like, and I look at it like this: like he may not have connected with me, but he does connect with some people, and the people who he connects with are people who I respect, and that's good enough for me, right? Like, and I'm going to spend the next 4 years working to get him to do, if he wins, I'm going to spend the next 4 years. I'm going to try and get him to do Medicare for all. I'm going to try and get that universal basic income for my neighbors, because I think that is where the direction that the Democratic Party should head in. Personally, that's my personal beliefs. But the thing is, it's an organization, and everyone has, just like everyone has a vote in an election, a general election, you all have a vote in these like party elections too. So and that's what I tell people, if you have a good idea, if you want, go out there, convince people, because that's all you need to do is like you need to. It's not about tricks, right? Like that's what I hate seeing in the president, all these tricks and lawyers and like knocking people off ballots and all that kind of stuff. No, man, the real game is just having a good idea and convincing people. And some people you're never going to convince, but there are people out there that you are going to be able to convince. And if you believe, and maybe you don't agree with me, then try and convince me, right? Like that's your job. If you don't agree with me, then it's your job to convince me. But I think as
Right.
Democrats, we all have a certain set of shared values, right? That we all like value an individual's life and individual rights, the empathy for people, right? Empathy over money, and
Absolutely.
and I don't know, I and I'm going to throw this question to you, but I do feel helpful. What about you? I feel hopeful if we win this election today, and which you can help us win right now. I feel like we're on
Yes,
like a call-a-thon,
you
right?
can
Like
help
we're
us
like
do
we're on
that. Go
like
right
we're
out there.
like
You got to get those people out there. I got 7 people that weren't in the books, weren't in the numbers, that made sure to get them to the poll. And, you know, and I did this today. I did not plan. I'm like, I should have been planning this out earlier and such. And you know what I'm really hopeful about if we win? One of the big things I'm hopeful about is somebody who is going to listen to the science when it comes to what the biggest issue in America is right now, dealing with the corona. That needs to be a priority, and it doesn't need to be politicized.
oh, I thought you were going to say
I
climate change,
see,
because I'll tell you, when he was in the debates and he said that he was going to transition away from fossil fuels, I was like, that's my guy, right? Like, I mean, I don't. Again, I'm not a engineer. I don't have those answers, but I'd want someone to actually be investing in the science that might find those answers, because right now we're just like, I don't know, I don't know.
we need to, I would say that we can do that within a 10-year period. And we're going to do that, I think, under Biden. We can do it in a 10-year period, but the here and the now in the next 180 days, we need to focus, I believe, on, or coronavirus. It needs to be the focus for that short term. Really, we need somebody where we're not. I don't want to be number one in corona cases. I don't want the U.S. to be leading in that. And part of the problem is it's this lack of wanting to uh, think of others. There's a Christian saying that you spell joy, Jesus, others, and you. And I have not seen the joy from this president. No matter what your faith is, we all have, Buddhism talks about compassion, and, all these different religions have that same viewpoint, even if you are secular or whatever. And I don't see that from this president. And that's why we can't handle this virus. He doesn't want to listen to the science, and he doesn't want to have compassion for the people. They're just
Well,
numbers.
I
They're
mean, the one
just,
thing that I mean, look, this is probably gonna be an unpopular thing to say. I wanted to give him a chance when he won the first time. I did. Like, I wanted to give him a chance. I wanted to believe that he wasn't the person I thought he was. I really did want that. I really did. Um, he is exactly who we thought he was. right? And for some people, that's why they love him. But for me, that's why I can't stand him, right? I thought it was an act. I honestly did. But then it's like, oh my God, this person is really like that. And it's a thing, if someone tells you who they are, believe them, right? Um, Downward spiral. And I just don't see how we can survive another 4 years of this and still have our integrity as a nation intact when you're throwing children in cages at the border, right? Like, look, we can have a discussion about immigration policy. I'm down with that, right? But what
Right.
but that is something Americans don't do, or we shouldn't do. That's not who we are. It was like under the George Bush era with torturing, right? Like, we have a certain idea of who we are as Americans, and that personal identity does not involve those kind of horrific acts. And like President Barack Obama said, like, elections matter, right? And if you're here in Chester County, you have an hour. If you're watching, and let's say, okay, maybe you voted. Maybe you voted. To Chris's point, why don't you flip open your phone, text like 5 of your friends to see if they voted too, right? Just do that.
And you know what? I'm gonna do that right now. While you're talking about that, you keep talking. I'm gonna do that, and I want people who are listening right now to watch. I'm gonna get on my phone. I'm gonna text up some people. I'm gonna follow up some people while you keep
Dude,
going. Okay?
I feel like
you
we're
do
doing
that.
like an NPR fund drive here. You know what I mean? Like, go to the
Absolutely.
website at the
But
bottom. No, but seriously, if you
absolutely.
and like, let's say you got a mail-in ballot and it's still sitting there, right? Maybe you didn't even open it, and you're like, I don't want to. You actually don't even have to stand online. If you have a mail-in ballot, you can just fill it out. Yeah. Now make sure you put it. You need to complete it properly. It needs to be filled out like you would fill out the ballot. And if you place inside the secrecy envelope, which is the tiny blank white one, then you need to put it inside the larger envelope and sign it. Then you just drive it down to either voter services or one of the drop boxes. And again, you can find the Dropbox locations down at chescodems.org. But look, share this video. Do whatever you can to get in front of some people that might have slipped their mind. Look, I understand some people work 2 jobs, right? Those are the people that we're trying to help. We're trying to help those folks that are working 60 hours a week, right? And if you're one of those people, like I used to be a waiter working 2 jobs, 60 hours a week, and barely surviving. The only reason I was able to get out of that rut is because I won a bunch of money on a television game show. That's the truth, right? Like, I don't want to live in a country where you can be smart, you can be hardworking, but the only way to make it to the next level is to get on television. No, you know what I mean? Like, because I can't tell you how many working in the food service industry before I had my business, how many brilliant people I crossed paths with who just, they didn't get on a game show. They didn't have a rich uncle. They didn't have, right? Because that's the one thing. I was an entrepreneur, or I am an entrepreneur, but I hate using that term. But I did like tech stuff, and I used to have a tech company, and I used to go to these like networking events. And the one thing maybe they don't realize it, but like the one thing you realize is like everyone there got lucky at some point, right? Like I really hate to say that I have never met someone who just busted their back and they're like, that's the only thing it took. I literally started out with $5 and I just worked hard every single day and no one helped me out the whole time and now I own a huge business. That's not how it happens, right? Because even if you did it all by yourself, you still had to drive around on roads that were paid for by tax dollars. You were probably educated by the public education system, right? These are all things that we as Democrats have fought for, right? And the unions, we need to start really working with unions to help grow union membership. If you work in the food service industry, if you work in the retail industry, and did your boss tell you ever been told, hey, if you're going to miss work, you need a doctor's note? Well, you don't have health insurance through your job, so because Walmart ain't giving you health insurance if you're the greeter, right? So why is that the case? Well, maybe you should start talking to some of your coworkers and start asking around and reach out to a union worker, right? Reach out to, because that's how it starts. That's how any great movement starts, right? With one person saying, "I got an idea," and then reaching out to someone and be like, "Yo, what do you think about this idea?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's a good idea," right? Like that's how every single one of these major things happen.
Absolutely. So I'm back. I found 5 people, and I found people in Arizona, Texas, and Wisconsin. Different time. Well, I believe Wisconsin's a different time zone, right?
I think it's far
I
enough
think
away.
so.
Yes.
Yeah, Wisconsin. I had to think which if it is. I know Ohio's in our same time zone. And then I think it's Indiana where it crosses over, right? But I found people in other time zones which have more time to go to the polls. So I didn't even think about that. Think about, do you know people in Texas, in Iowa, in Arizona, any state? Make the voice heard, because even if it's in North Dakota, that person that doesn't feel progressive, that does not feel motivated in North Dakota, you know why? Because that's one more vote to make the popular vote. It's you got to get your voice heard.
And
If
not
it
just that
feels
vote
like
for the
it's a big
president,
enough vote,
because that guy is probably going to go out and probably going to vote down ballot for the Democrats, which we always recommend. And
yep,
so when you are encouraging someone to go out and vote for Joe Biden, you're also helping them vote for Carolyn Comida and Diane Herron and Dan Williams and Danielle Freelawton. And I mean, obviously not all in the same election. That'd be a very weird ballot. How did you get that ballot?
yeah,
But
true.
like because again, um, the results of these elections matter. Uh, you only get one chance at this, and the clock is literally ticking. You don't want to wake up tomorrow and say, "Man, I wish we don't. You don't want to wake up like 4 years ago with that same hangover and be like,
Right.
ah, right." So look, Chris, we're getting close to the next one. I got to start prepping for the next one. But yo, thank you so much for coming. Not just for coming on and talking to me, but
It was
like
my pleasure.
you've been such a help. You've been such a great help to me growing as a community organizer, and it's just nice to know that you were like literally the first guy in politics that was like, yeah, call me, dude, just call me. And then like I called you, and you're like, yo, what's up, dude? Let's get lunch. And you know what I mean? Like I that meant a lot to me. It really did, and I'm glad that we get to like work together now.
And I'm so grateful for what you have done. You have brought in so much fresh innovation and thought process that's different, and we're really getting out there and being able to have those important conversations with people using different platforms. So I am just so glad for all the work you're doing. Everybody out there, thank you for tuning in if you tuned in today, and I'm just really hoping for the best tonight. Hoping for the
Yeah,
best.
well, again, thank you, Chris. Have a good one. And like I said, we still have a couple more things going, so don't go away. We'll be back in a little bit with another guest, and I think we are gonna have the chair and vice chair back on to close out the day right before the polls close. So, thank you so much, folks.